Hey, welcome back to the stash. I love If This Be My Destiny. When I first properly started reading all of Spider-Man's comic books, this one story in particular is what got me properly hooked within the character. It's not just good, I'd even go as far as saying it is the best Silver Age comic to ever exist. Issues 31, 32, and 33 of The Amazing Spider-Man not only show what a comic book can be, but also what Spider-Man comics should be. Before it, Spidey comics still sold very well for the time, and don't get me wrong, those issues aren't bad at all. I personally really enjoyed the issues before it. Ones that spring to mind are Bring Back My Goblin to Me and Never Step on a Scorpion. However, when it comes to If This Be My Destiny, it simply broke the mold for Spider-Man comics. Hell, I loved this story so much, I locked my uncle up in the negative zone for a few months until he finished painting me all 3 covers. Lee and Ditko, man, they f***ing nailed it when it came to this story. From the character development to the iconic imagery that will forever live on within the Spider-Man world, to the themes of his great responsibility, and to even how intense the book gets. It's everything a Spider-Man comic should be, and much more. And I'm very excited to finally be able to share my passion and love for this comic with you all in this video. So join us today as we take a deep dive into the Amazing Spider-Man issues 31, 32, and 33, If This Be My Destiny. Our tale begins in the dead of night at a radioactive plant. A team of henchmen slowly descend from their helicopter. They quickly find what they were looking for and prepare the great getaway. But then, all of a sudden, a guard spots them and quickly becomes alerted. However, the strange men have come prepared with their very own sleeping gas. This is as easy as it gets, and they very well know that. One claims their strategy was 100% effective, but little do they know that that percentage is bound to take a massive hit when a certain wall crawler joins in on their heist. Spidey leaps into their escape vehicle and the fight ensues. If it isn't broken, don't fix is clearly what these henchmen live by as they once again use the sleeping gas. Spidey holds his breath for as long as he can while taking down some of the goons, however the gas eventually gets the better of him. Meanwhile, at the rear of the plane, the mysterious Master Planner informs his men to use Emergency Plan G in order to foil their foe. They dispose the units into the murky water, leaving it for their Task Force R to retrieve it and bring it back to base. While back aboard the helicopter, Spidey as a last-ditch effort breaks open an exit, and with the help of the guards he makes his escape. He's not in the clear just yet as the massive helicopter is seemingly going to crash right on top of him. He mustn't make a mistake. Using his trusty webbing and his very own spider agility, he's able to maneuver out of harm's way. However, this allows the henchmen to make their escape. Now, another thing special about this issue here is that it marks Peter entering into his college phase. This, in essence, is the beginning of the real good Spider-Man eras. That's why I'm always so disappointed when I see a new show or whatever have him in high school, because the college and even post-studying eras are where it's at as far as I'm concerned, but that's for another video. Anyway, the next morning, Peter says goodbye to his Aunt May as he goes off to his new campus at Empire State University. As he leaves, May is left observing him from the window and she thinks about how similar Peter is to his father. They both share such good qualities. She loves Peter. He's been a son to her all these years, but poor Aunt May is sick. Very sick. But she didn't have the heart to tell Peter on a day like this. She didn't want to ruin it, so she must put it off a little while longer. For the next few hours, Peter Parker is kept so busy that he hasn't had time to think of his Aunt May, of the strange events of last night, or of anything in general, save the dawning of a new and exciting campus career. Later on, once the day begins to wind down, Peter prepares for a good night's sleep before his first day at ESU, when suddenly Aunt May faints. Peter is rocked to the core. She falls into his arms as he panics for his dear old aunt. He tries to compose himself and quickly calls a doctor. Afterwards, he gets called into the room. It's not looking very good. May at the moment is extremely weak, however the origins of this illness are very unknown. They mustn't take any chances, not with someone at her age, so they call the ambulance. Once arrived, they give her medication which seems to have given her some of her strength back, even only for the time being. But unfortunately for Peter, he must now try to get some sleep before his first day at ESU. On his way back, Peter begins to bash himself. How could he even suspect she was ill when he's been so wrapped up in his own affairs? He believes he's taken her for granted. She's been like a mother to him, and in many ways she is his mother. And Pete, he hardly gave her the time of day. There was no use in trying to sleep after a night like that. It's borderline impossible. And thus, weary from lack of sleep and heartsick worry about his aunt's illness, Peter Parker begins his first day at college. Here is where we are first introduced to the likes of Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy. The pair seem to have already met Flash, and he's given his usual routine, until he notices Mr. Puny Parker. Gwen recognizes him from his science scholarship and immediately takes interest. Flash tries to get his attention, however Peter doesn't even bat him an eye due to all the stress he's under. During the day, Parker is completely out of it. All that occupies him is the thought of his Aunt May. The torment and grief reaches new heights by each passing second. He's so lost within his own world to the point where he shuts everyone else out. People try to be kind and greet him, but after each time they're met with no response. He's starting to build a reputation no one would want, and the worst thing is, he's completely unaware of his own doing. After class, Peter goes straight to a payphone and inquires about his aunt's condition, but he's met with a rather disappointing answer of still no change. A defeated Peter Parker hangs up and tries to put his mind to good use by studying, however to no avail. He simply can't get May out of his mind. He feels useless. What good's his amazing spider powers if they can't save the one person that means the most to him? Later in the chem lab, Harry, Gwen and the rest are observing Pete, who's once again lost in his own little world. This time though, Harry and the gang plan something a little more mean-spirited. Gwen at first is against the idea, but as soon as Peter ignores her for a second time, it simply boils her blood. Then boom, Peter's chemicals ignited. He was sure they were stable. It's impossible that they weren't. This left the professor very angry with Peter, yet Harry and the lot were having a ball. All except Gwen Stacy. Gwen never wanted him to get into trouble, so to make it up to Peter, Gwen and the gang try to invite him for some soda, but once again Peter has got some bigger things on his mind, so he brushes them all off at once. Afterwards, he goes to see Aunt May. She asks him various questions about his day and his new start in college, and Peter talks about how everyone is just swell, unbeknown to him that they're quite the opposite. Once visiting hours are over, the doctor pulls Peter aside to tell him some more unfortunate news. Now, they aren't certain what's causing all of this, but her condition is getting worse. She'll have to remain at the hospital for more tests. Peter can do nothing but accept it and makes his way home. When he arrives, he's greeted by some bills. Of course, at a time like this, just when he needs all the cash he can spare for Aunt May. He thinks to himself, sure, he can maybe quit college, get a full-time job so he can support himself and May financially, but then his aunt would be devastated at him throwing away his future he worked so hard for. But there is another way to earn some quick cash, alas it means spending the night away from his studies. And in the chill of night, like a streak of light, Spider-Man silently stalks the city rooftops. But of course, when you actually need crimes to be committed to intervene, there's none around. The streets are practically empty. And finally, as the first faint fingers of dawn creep over the still slumbering city, a wary Spider-Man stands defeated at the hands of a foe that never existed. He has a few hours before class, so he swings on home in hopes of maybe getting an hour or two of studying in. Through sheer willpower alone, he manages to do so, yet it leaves him completely drained because before he knows it, it's time for class. And so a very tired Peter Parker trudges towards his first class to begin what should have been a happy and exciting second day of campus life, unaware that most of the student population is talking about the new scholarship student who seems to feel he's too good to mingle with his classmates. But then we switch scenes to the Daily Bugle where a certain J. Jonah Jameson is anything but happy. He wants front page material news and he needs it now. JJJ goes to his reporters and gets the gears grinding. He suggests to Foswell to look into the recent robberies of scientific equipment, which he proceeds to look into right away as his secret identity patch. Then Jonah moves swiftly to Betty, asking her where her boyfriend Parker is. Betty tells him he's probably busy with studies, yet JJJ doesn't care and tells her to phone him. Now, just in case you didn't know, around this time Peter and Betty were a will they won't they sort of thing, and after recent events, in particular the ones with her brother Bennett Brandt, it left a real strain on their bond, especially when Betty knows he's hiding a secret. It doesn't help when Ned Leeds is also running around the office trying to win Betty's love as well, but we'll touch back on that later. Afterwards, Patch returns to the underworld and discovers plans of a new robbery, yet he can't go to police since he has no proper evidence of it. Lucky for him, a little wall crawler is about to make his life a little easier. Not yet, but very soon. Back at ESU, tensions are beginning to rise as Gwen is determined to get Peter to notice her, but to much of her surprise she's turned down again by Peter Parker, and this time it's her breaking point. Later, once again the amazing Spider-Man swings over the city. Grimmer, more serious, more concerned than ever before. This time he can't afford to take no pictures for J. Jonah Jameson. He needs the cash, he needs action, and he needs it now. Suddenly, a flashlight shines from a distance, almost like it's trying to call for him. He rushes over. It's Patch. He quickly informs Spidey of what he learned, and within a blink of an eye, Spider-Man is on the case. We arrive at Pier 6, and just like Patch said, a robbery is currently taking place. Spider-Man swoops in below and begins the brawl. It's the same group from the start of the issue. They try the sleeping gas once more, but they fail to realize that this time old Webhead came prepared. This move completely throws them off their guard, and Spidey takes full advantage. He even uses their own traps to his benefit, swiftly taking care of the henchmen. They manage to snag him in a net, but they should know by now that you'd need way more than that to contain the amazing Spider-Man. They know their beat and quickly rush to the ocean to return to base. Spidey could go after them, but with all their equipment, the water would be their element. As Spider-Man swings to the rooftop, he frets about the missed opportunity of photos. Now he's in deep trouble, and his financial problems aren't getting easier after tonight. Meanwhile, in the underwater base, the mysterious master planner goes over the possibilities of his ray, how with it he'll be able to rule the world. However, he must deal with that pesky wall crawler before continuing, for he swears their next encounter will be their last. And at that moment in the lab where Aunt May's tests are being studied, they come to the startling realization that her days are shortly numbered. Prepare yourself for the startling surprise, for you and Spidey are about to meet one of his most powerful former foes, as the teenage web spinner plunges into battle, with every tick of the clock bringing him closer to defeat. We begin issue 32 under the sea in the hidden headquarters of the Master Planner and his band of strangely garbed criminals. The experiments are almost complete. Our foe is seemingly close to the mastery of lingering radiation. For it was radiation that changed his entire life, and thanks to said radiation, the world will soon be menaced again by Dr. Octopus. Otto gives the word for his men to continue their search for any more atomic equipment, while on the surface, a young Peter Parker walks to the offices at the Daily Bugle. Betty notices him and leaps at the chance to finally confront him. But how could Peter tell her the truth? I mean, she thinks she loves him, but if Betty ever found out that he was Spider-Man, she'd never want anything to do with him, especially after all that's plagued her life. But then Ned Leeds, the man who wants to marry Betty, enters the scene. Peter uses this as an opportunity to try to make Betty hate him, so in a rather mean-spirited attempt, he acts like a total jerk to Ned and even shoves him into a door. But on the other side, Jonah is very rattled by the entire situation. After making up some excuses, Peter Parker shows Jonah his new photos he was able to take, but his esteemed publisher can't use a single one. As the anguished photographer turns to leave, Betty tries again to get him to explain what exactly has been going on as of late, but our saddened hero knows if she found out about him being Spider-Man, it would be over anyway, so once again he gives her the cold shoulder, with this time seemingly doing the trick. But even his tortured thoughts of Betty Brant are driven from his mind as Peter reaches the hospital where Aunt May is on the critical list. He attempts to see his aunt, however the nurse warns him she's far too weak for any visitors, so the doctor would like to see him. It turns out they've finally been able to figure out what's wrong with his aunt, however it's still a very puzzling case. In some mysterious way, Aunt May absorbed a radioactive particle into her blood and the doctors are unable to extract it. Peter turns pale white. Anxiety fills him from head to toe. Radioactivity in her bloodstream, and he's the one to blame. Back in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 10, May needed a blood transfusion in hopes of saving her. Peter gave May his own. This is all his fault, he thinks. All the way home, the heavy-hearted Peter Parker fights to keep control, but when the door shuts behind him, he loses it. I've always felt I was partly responsible for the death of Uncle Ben, because he was killed by a criminal whom I didn't catch. And now Aunt May? The two people I've loved most in this world, who are like my own father and mother to me, yet their love for me, their kindness to me has brought them nothing but tragedy. But it can't happen again. It mustn't. It mustn't. Not to Aunt May. She's been too good, too kind. I can't pay her back like this. There must be some way to save her. There must be, and I'll find it. Somewhere, somehow, I'll find it. No matter what the cost, I'll save her. Peter begins to get his brain thinking. He rushes over to the phone and calls Dr. Kurt Connors, a specialist in the field. Last he knew, he was in Florida, but it turns out he's now back in New York. Every second counts with Aunt May's life on the line. On the way to Dr. Connors' place, he drops by the hospital to snatch a tube containing Aunt May's blood. After the events of the lizard, Kurt is more than happy to help Spider-Man out. He swears he'll do everything in his power to find a cure. Spidey continues to explain all the context behind the situation and the two get to work. Connors remembers he read about a new serum created on the West Coast called ISO 36. If what they say is true about it, this would be the key to their success. Spider-Man tells him to order it and not to worry about the cost. He'll make sure to return with enough money to cover the expense. Minutes later, a desolate Peter Parker gathers all his science equipment that he's worked all so hard to buy and takes them into a second-hand store for whatever cash he can get. He then rushes back to Connors. It turns out he was luckily able to order in ISO 36 on special delivery that should arrive this very day. The two continue their work, with Spider-Man even getting a chance to show off his vast knowledge on the arts of science. Meanwhile, at the hidden headquarters of Dr. Octopus, the Master Planner, one of his guards informs him of the exact shipment holding ISO 36, exactly what Otto needs for his research. He calls every man available to make sure that that doesn't get away. Later that day, Doc Ock's gang swiftly makes light work of the whole situation and steals the valuable serum. News travels fast within New York, so it seems, as Connor receives a very dreadful call. The learning of the crime sends Spider-Man into a frenzy like none before. He tells Kurt he mustn't stop the preliminary experiments as he sets out to retrieve the isotope. Where to begin in a city like New York, he ponders to himself. He has to find Foswell. Surely he could be put to some good use. He swings into the Bugle only to meet a very annoyed Betty Brant who tells him Frederick left only a few moments ago. There's no time to waste. Once spotted, Spidey sweeps him off his feet and takes him to a rooftop close by. He explains the situation and what he needs from Foswell. He needs him to find out anything he can about the location of the Master Planner, and in return he'll give him the scoop once he's apprehended his foe. And in the hours that follow, the amazing Spider-Man invades every underworld haunt he can find. A rage none has ever seen before from the Wallcrawler, with strength that can only be described as out of this world. He makes his demands very clear. He wants the Master Planner, and he wants him now. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Aunt May is becoming weaker by each passing second. In fact, she's slowly slipping into a coma. There's nothing more the doctors and nurses can do. Her fate in the hands of a power far greater than theirs. In another part of the city, Spider-Man jumps in on a hot car ring, still on the valiant search for information. Word's already gotten around about this rampage this web-slinger has been on. Two men rush into their car, however Spidey is having none of it. No one leaves unless he says so. He grabs the car and flips it onto its side. The other hoodlums rush up on the steel staircase, only causing Spider-Man to get even more angrier. He rushes over and with his bare hands he rips the entire staircase off the ground. He warns them to drop the gun before he gets really mad, and he throws it at the two men who just got out of the flipped car. But after long minutes of relentless questioning, he comes to the dismaying conclusion that these crooks know nothing. And so the seconds fatefully tick by until Spider-Man is believed to have found another dead end. However, for some reason, this one sets off his spider sense. His trusty ability leads him to a trapdoor, and then the elated Wallcrawler stumbles upon a group of goons working for the Master Planner. He leaps straight into battle. He's furious. They're the ones who stole the ISO 36. A dozen or so goons all leap on top of Spidey, trying their best to stop him. However, they're no match for Spider-Man, especially when the stakes are this high. Reinforcements enter through a hidden door, and using the opportunity, Spidey quickly leaps through the opening before it shuts. They warn Doc Ock about what just happened, yet he couldn't have been happier. For he finally has the chance to get rid of that pesky Wallcrawler once and for all, with the ISO 36 as the perfect bait. Spider-Man finally finds what he's been looking for this whole time. But then suddenly, unexpectedly, a sharp high-voltage electric shock hits the spider-powered Crusader with staggering force. But before the day-stricken hero can reach the ground, a hidden door slides open as four super-powerful living tentacles lash out. Spidey finally learns the identity of the Master Planner, and still governed by a fit of fighting raging fury, Spider-Man uses his uncanny adhesive power to grip the floor as he performs a sudden counterattack. Doc Ock attacks with his trusty extra arms. Spidey is able to outmaneuver them. Even Otto begins to feel a sense of fear over the way his foe is fighting. He's never seen him act like this before, he's like a man possessed. Doc Ock tries to use his tentacles once more, yet the quick-thinking web swinger rips the metal floor and uses it to throw Otto off his balance. A foe who used to almost defeat Spider-Man at every turn. A foe who was counted as his most dangerous enemy. Can't help but run away in complete fear over the sheer power and anger Spider-Man displays. As a result of the recklessness of his fighting, the entire place begins to collapse. Otto quickly makes his escape to avoid his death, while Spider-Man must somehow survive all the obstacles as well as rescue the ISO-36. Seconds later, the large debris has seemingly trapped Spider-Man. Suddenly the reverberations have ceased in the vast rubble-filled chamber. He must get out. He has to, for Aunt May's life is on the line. But then the weary youth hears an ominous rumble from above. And as he turns his head, he sees the largest iron unit of all beginning to slide down towards him. He'll be crushed. He knows he can't stop it, but maybe his web can halt the process. Yet he's met with no success. He carefully twists and turns his body to place himself under the small hollowed out area. He did it. He saved himself from being crushed, yet the odds for survival of Aunt May, and now a wall-crawling hero, are at an all-time low. He notices water dropping from the ceiling. It's a slow leak, but it's getting faster and bigger. Soon the whole river will come surging through. Spider-Man knows he can't just stay there and wait for the end. He's got to try, if not for himself, but for his Aunt May who's given him the world. He gathers his remaining strength, but it's no use. After all the sleepless nights, he's far too exhausted. And while Spider-Man fumes at his seemingly hopeless predicament, May Parker slowly sinks deeper and deeper into a coma, as one faint word, the name of her nephew, the boy she loves like a son, softly crosses her lips. While directly across town, another man silently waits and worries, for if Spider-Man doesn't return soon, the ISO-36 will lose its potency, as many fathoms beneath the surface of the sea, but behind the bolted door unsuspected by the masked criminals, Spider-Man fumes in helpless rage as the drop of water fall ever faster and ever larger. As Peter Parker's Aunt May lies dying in the hospital, victim of the effects of radioactivity in her bloodstream, a sympathetic Dr. Connors waits for Spider-Man to bring the ISO-36 to him, for it is the only serum which might save Peter's aunt. I failed. Just now, when it counted the most, I've failed. But I can't give up. I must keep trying. I must. I've got to try to free myself, no matter how impossible it seems. And lifting is the only way. The only way. I can't. So exhausted. After all that fighting, I feel so weak. It's lying there just beyond reach, as though mocking me, taunting me. It's the one thing, the only thing that may save Aunt May, and I can't bring it to her. If she doesn't make it, it'll be my fault, just the way I'll always blame myself for what happened to Uncle Ben. The two people in all the world who've been kindest to me. I can't fail again. It can't happen a second time. I won't let it. I won't. No matter what the odds, no matter what the cost, I'll get that serum to Aunt May, and maybe then I'll no longer be haunted by the memory of Uncle Ben. Within my body is the strength of many men, and now I've got to call on all that strength, all that power that I possess. I must prove equal to the task. I must be worthy of that strength, or else I don't deserve it. The weight is unbearable. Every muscle aches. My head, it's spinning. Everything's beginning to whirl around. The strain, it's unbearable. The crack in the ceiling, it's growing wider, getting bigger every second. I'll never make it. I can't. No, I dare not give up now. If I close my eyes, I'll go under. Must stay awake. Must clear my head. Keep trying. I'll do it, Aunt May. I won't fail you, no matter what. I won't fail. Anyone can win a fight when the odds are easy. It's when the going's tough, when there seems to be no chance. That's when it counts. Everything going black. My head aching. Hold on. I must hold on. It's moving. Can't stop now. Last chance. Must keep the momentum. More. Just a little more. I did it. I'm free. A hero like no other, a display of sheer strength and willpower never seen before. The amazing Spider-Man has reached limits beyond what even he believed was capable. This hero knows he can't stop, even after the exhaustion, even after the torment of lifting the debris, even after the injuries he's sustained, he must push forward. The entire base is collapsing all around him. The ocean begins to swarm all the surroundings, taking Spider-Man and the ISO-36 with it. With surging thunderous power, the onrushing wave sweeps Spider-Man along the tunnel, as it hurtles on its course with force and impact such as only nature herself in all her fury can unleash. Finally, moments later, Spider-Man is able to rise to the surface, but suddenly more of Doc Ock's men still want to put up a fight, grabbing his leg trying to pull him under. He grants their wish, for with his powers, his lungs can handle holding his breath for a lot longer than a normal human, especially when the underwater breathing apparatus is ripped off. But when the hard-pressed Spider-Man finally climbs to safety, he realizes that his ordeal is still far from over. A group of Otto's men are blocking the only exit available. Spidey's got a job to do, and Lord knows nobody, nothing, no power on Earth is going to stop him while he lives. They rush into battle. After everything Spider-Man's been through as of late mixed with their high volume of numbers, it seems his foes finally gain the upper hand in combat. Little do they know it's just a simple ploy. The longer he rests by taking the blows and not fighting back, the more he regains his energy. He must time his second chance just right, but in his attempt, he's only met with more hits. Without full use of my leg, I can't maneuver as I should, and they're all fresh, rested. What's the matter with me? What if my leg is injured? What if they are more rested? They're just a gang of mangy crooks. But I'm Spider-Man. I'm Spider-Man, and I'm not going to fail. I'm not. Not with Aunt May counting on me, needing me. A man may lose, a man may be defeated. It's no disgrace so long as he doesn't give up. Spider-Man, fighting purely off his pride and the need to save Aunt May, manages to knock out every henchman. He can't stop now, not after everything he's been through. He must reach Connors before it's too late. And so a short time later, he finally reaches the lab of Dr. Kurt Connors. The pair return to their work. Spider-Man, when given a chance, secretly takes a sample of his own blood so he can test the antidote. Connors, confused at first, must trust Spider-Man's process. They check to see if the blood sample is healed from its radioactivity, and they are delighted by the result. Spidey gets Kurt to call the hospital to inform them about the breakthrough as he swings off to the building. No sooner is the phone call completed when Spider-Man leaps through the window. There's no second to waste. Aunt May is barely hanging on at this point, so they all rush to inject the serum into her blood. Now all they can do is wait and pray. It'll take around 2 hours to know if the cure was successful or not for Aunt May. With his spare time, Peter remembers about the perfect opportunity to make some more cash. He heads back to where he fought the group of Ock's men and begins snapping pictures, and just like he promised, he calls into the Daily Bugle to give Foswell the scoop, leaving Jonah a very happy man. Peter arrives at the Bugle walking as best as he can to see Jameson, but then, much to his own worry, he must face Betty Brant. He turns around and she's horrified at the state of Peter, all bruised and battered. Pete explains that he got injured from taking photos. He needs the cash and it's a part of the job, so he's not complaining, nor will he quit. Hearing Peter's grimly spoken words has a dramatic effect on Betty Brant, an effect he knew it would have. Her mind races back to her brother, the brother whom she loved but lost, all because he too wouldn't give up the dangerous life he wanted to lead. This is Betty's breaking point. It's enough to send her running away sobbing, however it left Peter fully realizing that he's no good for her, for if she feels this way about Peter Parker, imagine how she would react if she found out he's Spider-Man. Finally, Peter is able to see Jonah about the photos. JJJ is beyond ecstatic, he practically leaps for the pics, but finally Pete stands up to his boss to get what he deserves. He wants $100 each or else he'll take his business elsewhere. Of course, Jameson would have paid more, but he still acts like he's doing Peter the favor. Shortly thereafter at the hospital, it's time for the decision about Aunt May. He finds the doctor. He informs him the last checks are being done, but in the meantime he insists to give Peter a checkup due to all his injuries. Pete's on the verge of complete exhaustion, yet nothing has stopped him from all he's done over the course of these few days. But then this is it. The results are in. Peter anxiously walks into the room, with each step sounding like a thud of his heartbeat. The cure worked. The serum has stopped the blood deterioration. Peter did it. He saved his Aunt May. And so our lonely hero slowly walks off, heading home to get some well-deserved rest, now that all his fears have been finally put to bed. If This Be My Destiny is simply one of, if not the best Spider-Man stories to ever exist. No list of greatest issues of Spider-Man would be complete without the amazing Spider-Man issues 31, 32, and 33. In many ways, it shows why Spider-Man is the greatest superhero in fiction. In this story, he fights against hopeless odds. Now obviously other heroes have as well, but Spidey has got this complex personality mixed with his well-raised upbringing and relationships to make it clear why he fights on, why he gets back up, why he uses his great power in the name of his great responsibility. Spider-Man is, on a fundamental level, all about never giving up, and few issues demonstrate that as brilliantly as these ones do. The Amazing Spider-Man title was insanely ahead of its time when it comes to the Silver Age. This story alone has so much more emotion and realism than the other titles all combined. This is Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's masterpiece. It's a story that will forever live on in the world of Spider-Man, and it rightfully should. I remember reading issue 32 for the first time, and I was beside myself with sheer awe with each turn of the page. Seeing Spider-Man in such a serious manner like never before was an experience I'll never forget. Then we had that beautiful scene where he lifts the rubble. I mean, everything about it was just incredible. From the low odds, to the dialogue, to the monumental effort by Spider-Man. It's just this comic is pure Spidey. Everything about it is amazing. When I look back on all three issues, from If This Be My Destiny to Man on a Rampage and lastly to Final Chapter, there's only one word that best describes it. Perfection.
Enough said.
It's perfect. It's an astounding tale of one man pushing limits, battling the odds, and showing the true resilience of the human spirit while never getting the acknowledgement he deserves or the woman he loves. All he can take, however, is solace in that he saved the day. From the beautiful pencils by the legendary Steve Ditko, to the shared plot between him and the masterful Stan Lee, to the impact this had on comics and Spider-Man as a whole, it all gracefully wraps up into this one massive, iconic story that will forever live on in my heart, and it's simply why I love The Amazing Spider-Man, If This Be My Destiny.